chosen one, hear this word carefully, because the days ahead will not be normal days. They will not be days of comfort, nor days of neutrality. They will be days of separation. What once sustained the masses will no longer sustain you. What once entertained will now weaken. What once seemed harmless will become poison. For there is a shaking coming not only of nations, but of hearts. Not only of economies, but of souls. And in that shaking, only what is eternal will remain. The world will offer many cups to drink from. They will look appealing. They will promise peace, safety, fulfillment, identity. But hidden within them is compromise, distraction, and death of the spirit. You were not chosen to survive on what kills others slowly. In the days ahead, information will increase, but wisdom will decrease. Noise will grow louder, but truth will grow rarer. Comfort will be worshipped, while obedience will be mocked. And many will perish, not because they lacked resources, but because they consumed what was never meant to give life. Hear this. Not everything lawful will be safe. Not everything popular will be pure. Not everything spiritual will be from God. The poison will not always look evil. Sometimes it will look like success. Sometimes it will look like tolerance. Sometimes it will look like peace. But poison works quietly. It weakens before it kills. It dulls discernment before it destroys direction. So what will keep you alive? Not systems, not governments, not trends, not personality. Only these: truth that does not change in a world that rewrites reality. You must anchor yourself to what is eternal. Truth will not adapt to culture. Culture must bow to truth. Obedience over convenience, the path that keeps you alive, will not always be easy. But disobedience will cost more than obedience ever could. Separation without isolation you are in the world, but not of it. When everyone else blends in, you must stand apart. Salt only works when it is different. A disciplined mind and guarded heart, what you allow in will shape who you become. If you consume poison daily, do not expect strength tomorrow. Faith that acts, not faith that speaks the days ahead, will not reward passive belief. They will require courageous faith, faith that moves, resists, stands. Chosen one, you were not selected to be comfortable. You were selected to be preserved. The storm will expose what is real. The fire will reveal what is true. And only those rooted deeply will remain standing. So choose carefully what you drink from. Choose carefully what you follow. Choose carefully what you tolerate. Because in the days ahead, everything else will be poison. And only what is eternal will keep you alive. The days ahead demand separation in a way that previous generations rarely understood. There was a time when blending in felt harmless, when standing in the middle seemed wise, when silence was mistaken for peace. But the coming days will expose neutrality for what it truly is: a slow surrender. The world is moving toward clear lines, sharper contrasts, and deeper divisions of truth and deception, light and darkness. In such a time, trying to remain undefined will not protect anyone. It will only leave them unprepared. Separation does not mean withdrawal from life, nor does it mean hatred or arrogance. It means discernment. It means knowing what does not belong in your spirit, even when it is celebrated by the crowd. It means recognizing that not every door that opens should be walked through, and not every voice that speaks should be trusted. When the pressure increases, what is mixed will crack. Only what is whole will endure. In earlier days, compromise appeared manageable. People believed they could hold a little truth and a little lie, a little conviction and a little comfort without consequence. But the days ahead will not tolerate mixture. What once seemed small will become decisive. What once could be ignored will now determine survival. The middle ground is disappearing, not because it is attacked, but because it is unstable. Separation begins internally before it is ever seen externally. It starts with choices of thought, focus, and allegiance. What shapes your decisions? What influences your conscience? What defines your identity? If these are shaped by shifting opinions, approval, or fear, then when pressure comes, collapse will follow. But When identity is rooted in what is unchanging, separation becomes strength, not isolation. The world will call separation dangerous. It will label it extreme, outdated, or divisive. Yet history shows that every preservation begins with distinction. Light only has meaning because it is not darkness. Salt only preserves because it is not diluted. When everything blends together, decay accelerates. Separation is not the enemy of love, it is the guardian of purpose. As systems become louder and distractions multiply, the cost of standing apart will increase. Approval will be offered in exchange for silence. Comfort will be offered in exchange for compromise. Belonging will be offered in exchange for obedience. Many will accept these trades without realizing what they have lost until it is too late. Separation, though costly at first, will prove to be the only safe place when the storm fully arrives. Those who choose separation will often feel alone, misunderstood, or delayed. But what feels like delay is often protection. What feels like isolation is often preparation. The unseen work done in separation produces discernment, endurance, and clarity that cannot be formed in the noise of the crowd. When confusion spreads, those who separated early will see clearly. The days ahead will reward those who decided in advance who they belong to. When pressure demands instant decisions, only preset convictions will stand. Separation is not a reaction to crisis, it is a preparation before crisis. Those who wait until the shaking begins will struggle to choose, but those who separated earlier will stand without hesitation. In the end, separation is not about rejecting the world, it is about preserving life. It is choosing depth over popularity, truth over acceptance, and obedience over ease. When everything else becomes unstable, separation will be the line between collapse and preservation. Those who understand this will not fear the days ahead. They will be ready for them. What the world offers will become poison. Not because it is always openly evil, but because it is subtly corrosive. Poison rarely announces itself. It is designed to be consumed slowly, pleasantly, and repeatedly until strength is gone. In the days ahead, the greatest danger will not come from obvious darkness, but from things that appear harmless, reasonable, even beneficial. What once felt neutral will begin to drain life. What once entertained will now weaken discernment. What once comforted will quietly enslave. The world will present solutions that promise relief without transformation, peace without truth, unity without conviction. These offers will sound wise, compassionate, and progressive. Yet beneath them will be a demand: surrender what is eternal in exchange for what is temporary. Many will drink deeply, unaware that the very thing they depend on is slowly destroying their ability to stand. Poison works by numbing. It dulls sensitivity before it causes collapse. In the same way, constant exposure to compromise dulls conviction. Constant noise silences wisdom. Constant distraction erodes focus. People will not fall suddenly, they will drift gradually. They will wake up one day weakened, confused, and unsure how they arrived there. The poison will not be a single moment of failure, but a daily intake of what was never meant to sustain life. Entertainment without boundaries will become poison. Information without truth will become poison. Tolerance without discernment will become poison. Even success, when pursued without purpose, will become poison. World will celebrate these things, reward them, normalize them, and shame those who resist them. Yet celebration does not change nature. Poison remains poison, no matter how beautifully it is packaged. There will be voices saying, everyone consumes this, everyone thinks this way, everyone lives like this. But truth has never been decided by majority. Life has never been preserved by popularity. The days ahead will expose that following the crowd is one of the fastest ways to lose strength. What feeds the masses will not feed the chosen. What sustains systems will not sustain souls. The danger is not only in what is consumed, but in how often it is consumed. A small dose taken once may seem harmless, but repeated exposure reshapes desire, rewires thought, and redefines values. Over time, people will begin to crave what weakens them and resist what would heal them. This is the deepest effect of poison. It convinces the body to reject the cure. The world will call this freedom. It will call it self-expression, progress, balance, and enlightenment. But freedom without truth leads to bondage. And balance without conviction leads to compromise. The poison of the days ahead will convince many that boundaries are harmful and discipline is outdated. Yet, without boundaries, nothing is protected. Without discipline, nothing survives. Those who refuse the poison will seem strange. They will be questioned, pressured, and misunderstood. They will be told they are missing out, falling behind, or living in fear. But what appears like loss will later reveal itself as preservation. What looks like restriction will prove to be protection. When others grow weaker, those who guarded what they consumed will grow stronger. The days ahead will force a question upon every soul. What truly gives life? When strength fades and clarity disappears, many will realize too late that they were feeding on substitutes. Only what is rooted in truth, purity, and purpose can sustain life when pressure increases. Everything else, no matter how appealing, will eventually betray those who depend on it. To recognize poison requires discernment. And discernment requires stillness, humility, and courage. It means saying no when yes is easier. It means walking away when staying is celebrated. It means trusting that life is found not in abundance of options, but in faithfulness to what is pure. In the end, survival will not be about having more, but about consuming wisely. Those who learn to refuse what weakens will be the ones who endure. When the effects of the poison finally show, it will be clear that what the world offered was never meant to give life at all. Only eternal truth can sustain life when everything else is shifting. In a world where definitions change overnight and convictions are rewritten to fit convenience, stability becomes rare and confusion becomes normal. The days ahead will not reward those who adapt their beliefs to every new trend. They will reward those who anchor themselves to what does not move. Eternal truth is not popular because it does not bend, and it is not celebrated because it does not negotiate. Yet, it is the only foundation that remains when every other structure begins to collapse. Truth today is often treated as flexible, something shaped by feelings, opinions, or collective agreement. But flexible truth cannot carry weight. It breaks under pressure. When circumstances become difficult, people who rely on shifting beliefs will find themselves without direction. Eternal truth does not depend on culture, approval, or emotion. It stands independent of human agreement. And that is precisely why it can sustain life in uncertain times. The coming days will bring information overload. Knowledge will increase, but clarity will decrease. People will be surrounded by voices claiming authority, expertise, and moral insight. Without an unchanging reference point, discernment will vanish. Eternal truth becomes that reference point. It cuts through noise, exposes deception, and provides direction when choices become costly. Those anchored in truth will not need to panic when narratives change because their foundation was never built on opinion. Eternal truth also demands alignment, not just agreement. It is not enough to acknowledge it intellectually. It must shape behavior, priorities, and decisions. Truth that is admired, but not obeyed, cannot sustain life. In times of ease, this distinction seems minor. In times of pressure, it becomes everything. When obedience carries consequences, only those who have already aligned their lives with truth will endure without compromise. The world will attempt to replace eternal truth with emotional truth. Feelings will be elevated as final authority, and discomfort will be treated as injustice, but emotions change quickly. And decisions made on emotion alone rarely lead to life. Eternal truth provides stability beyond mood, circumstance, or season. It offers guidance even when obedience feels difficult and outcomes are uncertain. Those who reject eternal truth will not do so openly at first. Instead, they will redefine it, soften it, or dilute it until it no longer challenges them. This creates the illusion of belief without the weight of conviction. But diluted truth cannot preserve anything. Just as salt loses its purpose when it loses its strength, truth loses its power when it is stripped of authority. The days ahead will expose the cost of ignoring eternal truth. When moral confusion increases, those without a firm foundation will be easily led, easily frightened, and easily controlled. Fear thrives where truth is absent. Stability thrives where truth is embraced. Eternal truth does not remove challenges, but it removes panic. It does not promise ease, but it promises direction. Those who build their lives on eternal truth will find themselves increasingly out of step with the world. Their values will seem strange. Their decisions will appear restrictive. Their refusal to compromise will be misunderstood. But when pressure intensifies, their steadiness will become evident. While others scramble to redefine themselves, they will remain grounded. Eternal truth also provides hope that is not dependent on circumstances. When systems fail and promises collapse, hope rooted in truth remains intact. This hope is not optimism based on outcomes, but confidence based on what is unchanging. It allows endurance without bitterness and perseverance without despair. In the end, survival will belong to those who chose truth over comfort and conviction over convenience. Eternal truth will not only sustain life, it will preserve identity. In a world losing its sense of direction, those anchored in what is eternal will stand firm, not because they were stronger, but because they were rooted in something that could not be shaken. Obedience will matter more than convenience in the days ahead, because ease is temporary, but consequences are lasting. For a long time, convenience has been treated as wisdom. People have been taught to choose what feels good, what saves time, what avoids discomfort. But convenience has a hidden cost. It slowly trains the heart to avoid sacrifice and the mind to resist discipline. When pressure increases, those trained by convenience will struggle to stand. Obedience is rarely celebrated because it often requires surrender. It demands trust when outcomes are unclear and commitment when alternatives look easier. In easier seasons, disobedience may appear harmless. The consequences seem delayed, the cost invisible. But the days ahead will compress time. Choices will carry immediate weight. What once seemed small will become decisive. In such moments, convenience will betray those who rely on it. Convenience asks, what is easiest right now? Obedience asks, what is right, even if it costs me? These two questions lead to very different destinations. One preserves comfort, the other preserves life. When decisions must be made under pressure, only those who have practiced obedience in private will remain steady in public. Obedience is not built in crisis, it is revealed there. The world will offer shortcuts in exchange for silence, compliance, or compromise. These shortcuts will promise relief from tension and protection from conflict. Many will accept them, not realizing that what they gain in the moment will cost them strength in the long run. Obedience, though difficult at first, builds endurance. Each act of obedience strengthens discernment and clarity, making the next decision easier to face. Obedience also trains the heart to value truth over outcome. It teaches trust beyond understanding. When everything makes sense, obedience feels unnecessary. But when understanding fails, obedience becomes the anchor. The days ahead will include moments where clarity is absent and pressure is high. In those moments, convenience will offer escape, but obedience will offer preservation. There will be voices claiming that obedience is outdated, rigid, or extreme. They will argue that flexibility is wisdom and that adaptation is survival. Yet history shows that what survives is not what bends endlessly, but what remains rooted. Obedience is not rigidity, it is alignment. It aligns actions with purpose and life with truth. Without alignment, movement becomes directionless. Those who choose obedience will often face resistance, misunderstanding, and isolation. They will be told they are making life harder than it needs to be. But what looks like hardship in the present will become security in the future. Obedience builds a foundation that convenience cannot replace. When storms arrive, foundations matter more than speed. Convenience seeks immediate relief, but obedience prepares for long-term endurance. One avoids pain, the other produces strength. The days ahead will not reward those who avoided discomfort, but those who developed resilience. Obedience shapes character, and character determines response under pressure. When fear spreads, character will decide who stands and who collapses. Obedience also protects from self-deception. Convenience has a way of justifying compromise. It provides reasons, explanations, excuses that sound reasonable. Obedience cuts through justification and calls for action aligned with truth. It simplifies decisions in complex times. When truth is clear, obedience becomes the path forward, regardless of personal cost. In the end, obedience is not about control, it is about trust. It is choosing to align with what gives life, even when the alternative looks easier. The days ahead will expose the weakness of convenience and reveal the strength of obedience. Those who choose obedience will not be spared difficulty, but they will be preserved through it. They will stand, not because they chose comfort, but because they chose what was right when it mattered most. What you consume shapes who you become far more than most people realize. Every thought entertained, every image absorbed, every message repeated leaves a mark. Nothing enters the mind or heart without shaping perspective, desire, and direction. In quieter times, the effects may seem small or slow, but in the days ahead, the accumulated impact of daily consumption will become visible. Strength or weakness will not appear suddenly, it will be revealed. Consumption is not limited to food or material things. It includes words, ideas, beliefs, media, conversations, and influences. The mind feeds constantly, even when the heart is unaware. What is consumed repeatedly becomes familiar, and what is familiar becomes normal. Over time, normal becomes acceptable, and acceptable becomes defended. This is how subtle erosion occurs, not through sudden rebellion, but through gradual exposure. The days ahead will be saturated with content competing for attention. Voices will be loud, persuasive, and relentless. Without discipline, the mind will be shaped by whatever it encounters most often. Exposure without evaluation will weaken discernment. People will begin to think in ways they never intended, desire things they once resisted, and tolerate what they once questioned. This shift will feel natural, but it will not be harmless. Guarding the mind and heart is not fear, it is wisdom. Protection is necessary where value exists. What is precious must be watched carefully. The assumption that everything is harmless until proven dangerous will no longer hold. In times of saturation, discernment must come before consumption, not after damage is done. What you consume also determines your emotional and spiritual resilience. Constant intake of fear produces anxiety. Constant intake of outrage produces anger. Constant intake of emptiness produces restlessness. Many will search for peace while feeding on chaos, not realizing that their consumption is fueling their unrest. Strength cannot grow where nourishment is toxic. Discipline in consumption creates clarity. When intake is intentional, the mind becomes sharper and the heart more stable. This does not mean ignorance of the word, but discernment within it. Knowing when to listen and when to turn away will become a survival skill. Silence will become as important as information. Stillness will become as valuable as knowledge. The world will label boundaries as extreme and restraint as unnecessary. It will celebrate unlimited access and constant stimulation. But unlimited access without discernment leads to overload, and overload leads to numbness. When everything is consumed, nothing is valued. Depth is lost where saturation dominates. What you consume also shapes your responses. Under pressure, people do not rise to ideals, they fall to habits. Habits are formed by repeated intake. If the mind is trained on noise, it will respond with confusion. If it is trained on truth, it will respond with clarity. The days ahead will reveal what people have been feeding on all along. Those who practice restraint will not be popular. They will seem disconnected, slow, or out of step. But restraint builds strength quietly. It creates space for reflection, discernment, and growth. When others are overwhelmed, those who guarded their intake will remain steady. Consumption is a choice repeated daily. Small decisions accumulate into character. Character determines direction, and direction determines outcome. The days ahead will not ask what you believe in theory, but what you have been shaped by in practice. What you allowed into your mind and heart will stand with you when pressure comes. In the end, survival will not belong to those who consumed the most, but to those who consumed wisely. Guarded minds will produce resilient lives. Disciplined hearts will produce clear vision. Those who understood the power of consumption will not be surprised by the days ahead. They will be prepared, strengthened by what they chose to take in, and protected by what they chose to refuse. Active faith will be the key to preservation in the days ahead, because belief that never moves will not withstand pressure. There is a form of faith that speaks well, sounds convincing, and feels comforting, yet produces no action. That kind of faith survives only in calm conditions. When resistance increases and choices carry consequences, passive belief collapses. The days ahead will not test what people say they believe, but what they are willing to stand for, act on, and endure. Faith that preserves life is not merely agreement with truth, it is alignment with it. It steps forward when retreat feels safer. It acts when silence would be easier. It obeys even when understanding is incomplete. Active faith is not reckless, but it is courageous. It moves with conviction rather than waiting for perfect conditions. In times of uncertainty, waiting for clarity often becomes an excuse for inaction. Active faith moves while trusting that clarity will follow obedience. The world is comfortable with private belief but resists visible conviction. Many will be encouraged to keep faith internal, personal, and unexpressed. But faith that never leaves the heart never shapes the world. In the days ahead, internal belief without external action will not be enough. Pressure will demand decisions, not opinions. Active faith prepares for those moments long before they arrive. Active faith also requires endurance. It is not a single act, but a pattern of consistent obedience. It stands again after failure. It continues when results are delayed. Many will grow weary because they expect immediate outcomes. When outcomes do not appear, they will question the value of faith itself. But faith is not measured by speed. It is measured by faithfulness. Preservation belongs to those who continue, not those who begin loudly and quit quietly. There will be moments when active faith costs reputation, security, or opportunity. In those moments, fear will offer alternatives. It will suggest compromise, silence, or retreat as wisdom. Active faith recognizes fear without obeying it. Courage does not mean absence of fear. It means choosing obedience despite it. The days ahead will reveal that fear paralyzes, but faith mobilizes. Active faith also sharpens discernment. When faith is exercised, clarity increases. Those who act in alignment with truth will see more clearly than those who remain undecided. Indecision breeds confusion, but obedience produces direction. Each step taken in faith strengthens confidence for the next. Those who remain passive will find themselves increasingly uncertain, while those who act will grow more resolute. Faith that preserves life is not loud or dramatic by necessity. Often it is quiet, consistent, and unseen. It shows up daily, resists temptation repeatedly, and chooses integrity over ease. These small acts accumulate into strength. When crisis comes, that strength will be evident. Those who practice faith only in words will struggle to find footing, but those who practiced it in action will stand firm. Active faith also refuses despair. When circumstances worsen, it does not retreat into hopelessness. It acknowledges difficulty without surrendering purpose. It continues to act rightly even when outcomes seem unfavorable. This perseverance becomes a testimony not to comfort, but to conviction. In the end, the days ahead will not preserve those who believe passively, but those who live faithfully. Active faith will be the dividing line between collapse and endurance. It will not remove trials, but it will carry people through them. Those who choose to act on what they believe will find that faith itself becomes their strength, their direction, and their preservation when everything else fails.